If everyone can please find a seat, we would like to start. All right, we're gonna hopefully go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to see so many people, right? All right, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna ask Aaron Adams to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And once we're done, if everyone can remain standing, I'll tell you why afterwards. But Aaron, would you mind leading us in the pledge? My heart is racing on this one. But I'd like us all to take a moment have a moment of silence and for Officer Calhoun and his family. And then after that, Bill is going to lead us in a prayer. So if all of you can just bow your head and just take this moment and also think of all the other officers that are out there and other first responders. Thank you.
Good and gracious God, we are so blessed to have men and women who work diligently for our safety and well-being, even when their jobs are difficult and often thankless. Help us remember to thank them for their sacrifices and service to our community when they serve us. May we touch heaven with prayers of gratitude whenever we see or personally encounter first responders. Give them the strength that you provide as they serve. God, the families of first responders experience so much stress and fear. Bring your peace to their families, and in particular, to the Calhoun and Cordero families. Comfort them in their time of need and help them to keep their eyes on you. We ask this in your name. Amen.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. I couldn't even finish the pledge. I was getting burst out. All right, we're going to go ahead and move with verification of quorum.
Yes, Director Alex Cook,
Here.
Director Van Vliet.
Here.
Director Doherty is absent. Director Tim Cook is absent. President Griffiths.
Here.
3 present, 4 met.
Thank you. Thank you again for everyone being here. Thank you so much to city staff for being here. We greatly appreciate this. One thing I just want to let you guys know in advance before we start, the last part for member comments, it's going to be a little bit more informal in the sense that you do not have to worry about completing a comment card. We still want you when you come up to give your track and lot. If you're already completing a comment card, you can do so, but we don't want a member to all of a sudden you have a great question pop in your mind. You're like, oh my goodness, I need to go fill out a comment card. We just want it to be more free flowing for this workshop. POA still, or the board still can't respond to a lot of things because we have those restrictions on us, but certainly staff can answer questions, and I believe city can answer questions, or city staff can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lynn.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Yes, as Renee said earlier, wow, this is a room full. So thank you, everybody, for taking time to come attend. It's been a couple years, and I know the board and staff really appreciates the volunteers, and you guys are really our base group of support to the POA and to the community. So first of all, a big thank you to all of you for all volunteering. You know, we all need some kudos here and there. I also want to thank the city for attending. So a week or so ago, we met with the city to discuss the special event permit fees, fire fees, and just that collaboration with the city. And we asked them to attend this meeting. So I want to thank the city for taking time out of their evening to come meet with the clubs also, because this is a working group and we want this to be a good collaboration with the clubs. So we're going to do a presentation, then the city will do a presentation, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. Okay? Hopefully everybody can hear me in the back. Try to talk loud. Okay, so a big shout out. I don't think they're here, to our communications team. They helped us put this package together, but they also built a web page today for us to have all this information on. If you go to this event planning, we're putting all these details out there with links to forms, link to city forms, link to information that the clubs know. We're trying to get the information out to you all. And since it's been a few years, we thought that this would be very helpful. So this will be posted online after the meeting, so you don't have to feverishly take notes. Okay, so facility use policy. For those that know me, you've heard this term probably a lot the last decade. What the facility use policy is it's a policy that's internal. It's not in the rule book. So there's the rule book on use of a common area, but then there's this facility use policy that the board adopted about 13 years ago initially, on how the clubs and groups utilize the common area. And so we wanted to just highlight some key points here. The whole policy is about 10 or 12 pages. So that's why we wanted links to the full policy. So we didn't put you to sleep reading verbatim 10 or 12 pages of each of these policies. So the Canyon Lake POA, how it works is the POA goes in and we schedule all the annual reoccurring functions. Your big Fiesta Day, 4th of July, the holidays, these annual community events. Then we go in and schedule all the POA board meetings, committee meetings, et cetera. And then we allow members to schedule 1 year in advance from the day of. So members that want to have an event, hypothetically, January 2024, can also call in and schedule that. So that's how it's kind of set up. But the policy goes in depth on priority, on use of the common area, and how that is all involved. Some things at the clubs, part of why we wanted the clubs to come to this meeting is clubs get a benefit for being a sanctioned club, and the activity groups even. Sanctioned club, a member, when they want to rent this common area, this banquet room, or a park pavilion area, they have to pay a fee. The clubs receive the daily fee is waived for sanctioned clubs that want to schedule banquets and events in the common area and at the restaurants. Each member, club, or group sponsored organization may schedule the facility up to 2 times per month. These are kind of highlights again from the policy. Reservation requests, however, cannot be submitted for holidays. Recently, the ski clubs worked with the staff activities and the ski clubs. The board adopted this North Ski and Jump Lake policy. So for years, we had kind of an unwritten policy on how the annual calendar was for using the North Ski area and the Jump Lake. And so these are some of the kind of the key points from that. Sanctioned clubs can request 1 event per month. No events during Memorial Day to Labor Day. We're trying to set the schedule at the 1st and 3rd weekend, just to not have back-to-back events. All tournaments have to be completed by 2, and then we have to coordinate Marine Patrol. One of the things that some of the clubs have been hearing, especially the ski clubs this year, is patrol is becoming more of a requirement for special events in the community. With the amount of participants that are attending, it's just becoming something that's a necessity and not something that's really optional, we'll say. So for the full policy, we also listed the North Ski policy here on the bottom of this page. Okay, so sanctioned clubs. So you all are here. So one thing, a reminder, I think Carrie said we've gotten about 20 or so sanctioned club renewal packets. We're taking those to the board next month for review and approval. So for the clubs that have not submitted their paperwork yet, friendly reminder to get it in ASAP. We're trying to get everybody renewed this coming month for the next 3 years. And part of that is these benefits that you get that you're going to see. So the Sanction Club policy fosters and promotes the existence of clubs and or other organizations created for recreational, fraternal, or civic improvement. Clubs and organizations that meet specific criteria defined in that Sanction Club policy and activity groups policy may be formally recognized as a sanctioned club. Recently, the board updated the policy, and here are some of the key changes. This year, they made a minimum of 20 members that must be prime, associate, or sub-associate members. That does not mean that you cannot have other members in your club. It just means that to be considered a sanctioned club, you need at least 20 of those particular members. As you can see, the community has gotten busier. Oh, losing my connection here. The last few years with all the clubs and all the growth in the community, and so the board felt that this policy needed to be updated. Apologies if I'm losing my connection. Okay. All right. In addition to that, sanctioned clubs have to meet the community service requirements, either providing community volunteer services, which I thank you all for volunteering, monetary donation towards an event and or activities, or monetary donations towards common area and improvements. So things that we've seen are community benches that have been bought by clubs or donations to other organizations. When you submit your sanctioned club packet, you would provide a letter of what that reciprocity is that the club's given back to the community in the last cycle. And then, like I mentioned earlier, sanctioned clubs receive approval for a 3-year cycle. So we're getting ready to submit that to the board, and then the approval will be for the next 3 years. So the benefits of being a sanctioned club. Annual calendar scheduling of sanctioned clubs begin the first Friday in September. And this is where it kind of starts to become important to some groups. Like I said, the POA goes in and we schedule everything out for the next calendar year. Then all the clubs submit their packets. They want to get on the calendar. And with so many clubs and so many things going on, we do have folks that want, this is really important to them. We give them a discounted rate for use of the common area. We have been implementing charges for staff time and use of equipment. That is more of a cost recovery than us just trying to charge a fee to charge a fee. Because we're giving the facility for free, because we're letting the clubs use the equipment, which we do not let members use. And because of the time involved for that, the POA in the policies adopted that the costs have to be recovered via the staff setup time. And then currently we offer discounted menu items for club banquets. This is a bigger discussion that we'll kind of get to a little bit later, but that's part of the benefit of sanctioned clubs. As I mentioned earlier, use of equipment. And then lastly, and Renee probably would touch on this also, because some of the clubs that she's been a part of, that she's seen us do advertising. So communications has put together very detailed form for us to be able to advertise clubs, events, and activities on our LED signs, on our website. We've really been trying to promote and have that collaboration with our communication staff of how we can help clubs advertise their events. Okay, so talking about the event scheduling. So we begin the first Friday in September. Then we notify the clubs at the end of the summer, okay, it's time for you to start submitting. Then we hold a lottery the first Friday of September to determine that order of priority. And like I said, we've had times throughout the year where there's multiple events on one weekend requested. And so there's a lot of collaboration, we'll say, with activities on when we're scheduling those annual events. So discussing about fees and the benefits for clubs. So right now, in the 2022-2023 facility fee schedule of the budget, you'll see under the lodge, clubs get use of common area for free in these banquet rooms. Members do have to pay a fee, and this is a big benefit to clubs. And when we talk about the banquet pricing, when we talk about the food, when we talk about cost recovery, these are all factors of this. When we're talking about the budget, some of the clubs that have met with me, they've heard me say, let me put my activities hat on so I can talk about the fun club stuff and activities, or let me put my food and beverage hat on so I can talk about the fees and the financials for the restaurants. So Right now, these are the fee schedules for this. We are in the process of reviewing the budget for next fiscal year, so these are subject to change. This is the fee schedule for the country club. Again, clubs are free during the week. I'm sorry, clubs are free to use the facilities. Members pay a fee. One thing that is in our facility use policy that isn't specifically outlined on here, on weekends when clubs and or members want to use the banquet facilities and they're not having a banquet, I'm sorry, clubs are not having a banquet, so you just want to have a meeting, no food service, we do charge you to use this room for a private function. If it's a community event, and there's food and beverage service, then we do not charge for that. And then lastly, the parks and common areas. So again, clubs are not charged a fee for reservation of those common areas. Members are, and so this is a give back that the POA, I apologize. I'm sorry, what's that? What's that? The fee schedule? It's in our facility use policy. So when we get to the website at the end of the presentation you'll see on the website the full policy. As I mentioned earlier, the policy is about 12 pages long, and I didn't want to take up everybody's time to read through the 12 pages of it, but it talks about this stuff there. We just kind of want to give some highlights. So here's the park common area reservation fee schedule. Okay, so something that's kind of been a topic of discussion lately is all these special event requirements. There's been confusion and or questions or inquiries about what's required by whom, which is why we wanted to invite the city to attend this meeting. As we all know, costs have gone up on everything, and we felt that it was important to help everybody understand the POA has its required documents, fees, permits, et cetera. And then the city and the fire and the health department also have theirs. So we kind of wanted to highlight some of these things for clubs that are hosting events, because as we grow, more things have become required. Okay, so there's application requirements for special events. So the first thing is you have to submit your facility reservation forms and your hold harmless agreements. Depending on the event, you may have to get an ABC permit if you're selling alcohol, a city special event permit, a health department permit if you're having food vendors. If you're having food vendors, you may also have to get insurance just from the food vendors themselves. In addition, we have learned this last year, which the POA has been having to do this the past few years, we've had to buy special event insurance just to host the event separate. So this is something that's, yes. So like I said, as time goes on with these events, more things have become required. You have to submit an event layout. Most of the clubs already do this, but this is kind of some reminders. And then of course, all these documents need to be submitted to our activities department. If you're hosting just a meeting, we just need the reservation calendar request form. Some folks have asked, what's the timeline on this? And this again is a thing that has become a question. So a minimum of 30 days prior to the event, we need the facility reservation form, the hold harmless agreement. If you're selling alcohol, the ABC permit, and then the layout of the event. This gives time for staff to prepare all this information, get it to our operations, get it to the city and or health department for planning discussions, operations, community patrol. We have to schedule all the staff. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that gets done in preparation of this, even for the club hosted events. And so that's why we set this minimum 30 days. Minimum 15 days prior, the vendors have to provide us their certificate of insurance, this final event layout, health department permit, and then again, all these final copies of documents. So as I mentioned earlier, some of the costs, so we give the clubs the free use of the facility. We give them the free use of the equipment itself. One of the things that we have charged for though is operation staff time for setup or tear down, community patrol staff time, marine patrol staff time, and some events have required additional police and or fire personnel to be on duty or on call. These are our fees right now for this. And this is again a cost recovery. So if we're having a club host an event, which is wonderful, but we have to schedule staff to come in and do that, and it's a cost to the association. This is why we have approved these costs to go to the clubs. Okay, food and beverage service. So sanctioned clubs, like I mentioned earlier, the benefit is that we have been giving clubs a discount on their banquet menus at the restaurants. Currently, the policy does not have a specific percentage amount. It previously did, and some folks have been contacting the POA inquiring about that. Currently, it's not set at a discount. One of the things that we've been evaluating with this current budget and with next fiscal year budget is we're trying to reduce the subsidy that we've been giving on this discount to clubs for their banquets. We recognize and appreciate the clubs using the facilities. However, as you heard me say a few minutes ago, cost recovery is a big thing. And so the more we reduce the banquet pricing for the clubs, when we're giving them the room for free, letting them use the equipment, we do not charge for linens. There's lots of things in there. It starts to become a cost to the association. And you as members also have the subsidy. And so we're trying to find the balance and get that differential between the two. So the club banquet pricing, you've probably heard, for those of you that have inquired with Paul and Laura lately, our prices have been going up. And really that's not to overcharge the clubs. It's more to get that subsidy down, right? We do build in benchmarks in our budget about how much we anticipate our cost of goods, how much we anticipate for our revenue, our labor, et cetera. And so that's really why we've wanted to have this conversation or start this conversation. As you see us doing our budget preparation and we're launching these new menus, our pricing has gone up, our food costs have gone up. And so we cannot keep those discounted menus, continuing at the rate that they were in prior years. So like I said, the subsidy is a big thing, menu pricing, cost of goods, labor costs, equipment and fee supplies. We don't charge for linens right now. It's something we may or may not have to do. We do charge for the setup time, but again, some of these costs have been waived because we've tried to give this benefit to clubs for using the common area without it being a cost to the other 4,800 homeowners that subsidize the restaurants. Okay, and then as I mentioned earlier, so we built this comprehensive web page where it has all of this information here. There's links to all the documents, links to all the different permit requirements. There's a step-by-step, select your venue, make your reservations, get permits. On each of these tabs, it has all the details that you would need. And then again, all these policies. So that's it for our presentation. So I'll turn it over to the city. I have the presentation if you want me to go through it, Corey. Is that okay?
No, we'll cover that. Good evening, Canyon Lake. My name is Corey Gorham. I'm the management analyst for the city. With me, I'll do some introductions. To my right is Jim Morrissey, city planner. Ruby Manzano, code enforcement supervisor. Anna Sacita, city clerk, and Jeff Latindris, our fire chief. So tonight our team will be discussing the ins and outs of special event permits through the city. We will cover the existing application process and fees, new changes that will go into effect on March 1st, the fire department's involvement, and finally code enforcement's involvement from an inspection and compliance perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Good evening. The process we're going to work through this evening is very similar to what you're used to. So you have an application, you submit it, it's routed for review. We're modifying that process slightly, but you'll fill out an application. And the goal is that, as Corey mentioned, it would be an online system. You would identify, and it's in the preparation stage at this point, but you would be able to check off, if you will, what it is you're doing. Based upon that checklist, it would assist us in determining what level type of event you would have. So we're going to have 4 different levels. The intent of the online system is to provide a more rapid response to you. So if you're having, for example, an event at your house, you're going to have 60 people. That doesn't really require routing to anyone. It just requires planning department approval. So you would check off what you're doing, submit the application, pay the fee, and staff would be able to approve that in a day or two. If you're not doing that, if it's a larger event in general, and I'll go over the different tiers. If it's a larger event, then it would be routed just as before, but all the applications would come in electronically, again, with the goal that the smaller, less, what do I want to say, varied type of applications would go right through the system. The other ones would be processed and routed through the normal process that you're used to. So we still have the same requirement. It's still the 50-person threshold. You exceed that threshold, and it's not a 50-person at any particular moment. It's the event itself. So say you're having an event that is going to drag on throughout the day, and you say, well, at one time, we may end up with 300 people all together, but at any particular time, we're not going to have more than 50 people at one time. No, it's the total number of people. So please keep that in mind. With regard to the different tiers, and again, as Corey mentioned, it's going to be 4 levels. So the first tier applies to a private event in which you are inviting people to either your club members, neighbors, specific individuals to a certain location. You're not having food service. You're not setting up a bounce house type activity. You're not requiring approval from anyone really other than planning to say, I'm having this event, I crossed over the threshold, and we would like approval to go ahead and have this event. And I want to mention too that one of the things we're going to try and do too, as part of this process, is indicate whether or not you have POA approval. If you're having it at your house, you don't need POA approval. But if you're having it at a park or some other common facility, then you're going to need POA approval. And that would have to be demonstrated through the application process. Right now, what happens is, in fact, I just was chatting with Carrie and the fire chief. What happens now is you give me an application. The first thing I do is I look to see where it's going to be held. And based upon that, if the POA has signed it. And if they haven't signed it, I walk it right over, I hand it to them. The application goes to them. I don't have it. I wait for it to come back. So what we're doing with the online system is making sure you tell us that you have the POA approval so we can continue on if you need the POA approval. As I mentioned, if it's at a private residence, you wouldn't need that. Now, that initial option does not apply to an event you want to have in which it's neighbors and whoever wants to show up comes to wherever the gathering is to be held. That's more the general public. That's not an invitation type only event. In addition, if you are having an event that requires people to go to a particular location, say you're having it at a park, and you're going to set up food at a certain location, everyone needs access to that food. You get into ADA requirements, Americans with Disability requirements. So people need to ensure that there's access for everyone to that location. So if you're doing that, then you wouldn't fall into the first option. That first option is 50 to 299 people, and that's $64. So that's what I'm going to term the private event level. So the fee is less. The number of people runs up to just short of 300. The next level is when you have some type of gathering in which you would have the public in general able to attend, and you may have food and other things at a central location. That level, again, 50 to 299, that fee is $128. Above that, then you get into the two larger levels, the tier 2 and tier 3. So tier 2 is 300 to 999. You have to count every one of them. No. Then tier 3 is above that number. So the tier 2 and the tier 3 are intended for larger activities. They have many things going on. They're going to require health department approval. It was mentioned you might need an ABC permit. The fire department is going to potentially have to do an inspection or be actually on site during the event. So the purpose of the different levels is to reflect the level of activity, and then the cost runs parallel with that. One of the things too that was mentioned initially relates to the vendors. It's important that you as the club pass along the information we provide to the vendors. Number of you have probably seen 2- and 3-page letters from me. They list all these requirements. Those requirements apply to the activity and all the people involved in that activity. So if there's food being provided, the people providing the food need to meet those requirements. And I think what has occurred is the person I'm sending it to has it, says, oh, this is great, but doesn't pass it along to the people assisting in your activity. So if they've set up for food, they're going to cook food, they have easy ups, they have a bounce house, they're doing different things. They all need to be aware of what's in those conditions. The fire department may have requirements for it. The building department may have requirements. Unless you pass it along to them, they're not going to know. And that's important because when inspections are made, staff is going to go out and take a look. And if something isn't correct, then it needs to be corrected. And that's difficult. I think I'll just hold up there and pass it along to the city clerk relative to business licenses.
Thanks, Jim. So as of March 1st, the business license fees are going to change slightly. So an annual business license is going from 161 down to 155. So we have a slight decrease there. And a single day vendor permit is increasing from $8 to $23. And that is for, as Jim mentioned, any vendors that are coming in to provide some type of service. We need to make sure that they're in compliance and have either a business license for the entire year or that they're purchasing the single day vendor permit.
Hello, I'd like to kind of cover the fire department aspect and the intention here is to make it easier for when you apply for these special event permits to know what we're looking for. We've been here a year now. We're still learning. We're trying to refine the process. And we think with this new system that we finally have it down. The first thing I want to say is, why are we involved? Are we more involved than when CAL FIRE was here? And I believe we are, and we're involved because we're charged with protecting public health and safety. And so when we have these gatherings of people over 50, we have to ensure for the safety of those people that are attending the event. We have to review plans for emergency access, for fire and electrical hazards, for adequate egress, for storage and or use of hazardous materials. What hazardous materials? Well, propane is a hazardous material. So if you're having cooking and your vendor has propane tanks there, that's something that we have to be aware of and inspect. The use of tents, or what is also called temporary membrane structures. Are they fire resistant construction? Do they have the tag in them? So these are the things that we have to look at, and it's why we're involved in the process. On the right of the PowerPoint there, you can see a plan that was submitted by the POA. Now, not all the plans need to be in that detail, but some of the plans we get, we can't really understand what's being proposed with the sketches that are being made. So we're going to work with the POA and see if we can come up with like a template of the different parks. And that template will be computer generated, and that can be provided or available on a website. You can download it and then you can mark it up with the park or the harbor or whatever already designed for. So we'll be working and trying to improve that as well. As Jim was talking about a minute ago, there are 4 different categories of permits or events. A tier 1 option A is one that we don't care about. It's one that we're currently looking into and evaluating and reviewing, but there's no need for us to review it. It shouldn't even be routed to a lot of the different departments that there are. The first one that we're going to look like would be what we call a tier 1 option B, where the fire department would get involved. There could be additional fees or inspections required. There may not be, depending on what's being proposed. So we've cut that out of the process and haven't included it until we look at the permit and make a decision. Does it require field inspections? Do we have to go out there and conduct those? A tier 2 event would be a fire department. Tier 1 option B is one that we would look at. All tier 2s we would look at, and then all tier 3s we would look at. Each of those could have additional fees. And a tier 3, where we're talking about over 1,000 people, might even require a fire department standby for the event that's going on. So what's some of the definitions of these events or an example? Well, a tier 1 option B might be a wedding outside the lodge where there's no reception outside. It's just a gathering of people. You might have some tents there, but there's not going to be any food vendors or anything like that. We probably don't need to do an inspection or any additional work on that. So it would just be the initial fee. A tier 2 event might be something like the tree lighting ceremony, the kids fishing derby, or even baseball opening day. Those type of events would be what we classify as a tier 2. And a tier 3, and it's hard to tell, there's, is someone out there with a counter counting the people? Is it over 1,000 people? But something like Oktoberfest, the numbers get up pretty high. Fiesta days, 4th of July, those are large gatherings here in the community that are very large events. That's going to have a larger impact or a greater impact on our ability to provide those services that the demand of the event brings onto us. So kind of going through, what are we looking at for fire department access? Well, the plans must show that you have a 24-foot wide emergency ingress and egress to the event. Doesn't have to be all the way through it, but if it's in one of the parks in the parking lot, we can't have the food vendors staged there. We really even shouldn't have loading and unloading in the fire lanes. Those fire lanes and fire hydrants need to be unobstructed. It includes golf carts. Golf cart is a vehicle, so they're not exempt from parking in red zones and fire hydrants. Tents or membranes or any part of the event can't be parked where that emergency access is. Fire and electrical hazards. Well, the event needs to have fire extinguishers. Those fire extinguishers need to be located 75 feet apart from each other in a travel distance. So those need to be identified on the plan on where they're going to be. The typical sizing might be, is normally a 2A 10 BC fire extinguisher. Does the vendor need a generator? If it's a bounce house, those generators and the electrical cords need to meet current UL and NFPA requirements. The generator needs its own separate fire extinguisher, and it needs to be spaced a safe distance from combustible material. So if there's combustible material in there, that has to be removed prior to the event going on. Tents and membrane structures. An easy up is considered a tent and a membrane structure. So all the sides, all the flooring, if there is flooring, have to be flame retardant for the requirements of NFPA. They must have anchors for the tents and membrane structures so that if there's a weather event, wind or rain, they're not going to blow away. They've got to be anchored down. They can't be located within 10 feet of property lines, buildings, or parked vehicles or generators. So it's something to consider as you're making your diagrams for your plans on showing if there is going to be a tent Where are those other things in location to that? Smoking's not permitted inside of these tents. So there should be signage for that. And the event may have a designated smoking area, but near the tents, there should be signage that indicate no smoking. The health department couldn't be here this evening, so I wanted to cover a couple things that they're also looking for, that we work together with them when doing their inspections. First off, as mentioned, all of these vendors need to have a city business license and a health department permit. If an employee is the only person inside the tent or membrane structure, it's not accessible to the public, then we're going to allow griddle type cooking appliances inside the tent. That's going to be a lot better for them, so they don't have to go outside and do their cooking. It's a change, it's an allowance that the fire code gives us as the area having authority to make that change. So hopefully that will be an enhancement. If you have a barbecue or a burner type device, it's going to have to be located outside of the tent, and it's going to have to be 10 feet away from the tent. If you're serving food, those tents have to be fully enclosed 4 walls, and the pass-through windows have to be accessible to hand the food out and to take in the cash. So again, in some of our events and some of the city events we've had recently, we've had issues with this, and we're trying to resolve it. And hopefully the best way we can do that is through education. And then each of these cooking tents will also need to have a fire extinguisher available. If the tent is set up on a grassy area, the tent's going to need a floor as well. And these are health department requirements. They're not fire department requirements, but it's there for the protection of the food that's being prepared for the public to eat. This is kind of a strange one, but the health department requires the name of the facility in at least 3-inch high letters, including city, state, and zip code, be on their advertisements. The name of the operator must be in 1-inch letters. Hand washing facilities with warm water, 100 degrees, must be provided along with soap and paper towels. All food and beverage items must be properly displayed, stored, prepared, and processed so that if it's either hot food or cold food, it's just not out in the open. And ice is considered a food. A bag of ice just can't be sitting on the ground. An ice chest is acceptable, but ice is considered food when you're treating it. Food trucks and food trailers, they're a lot easier to deal with. They really are than with the tents. But again, all of them must have a city business license, and they must have a health department permit. There is an exception with the food trucks and trailers that the vendor may be listed on the event coordinator's application that would be forwarded to the health department, and the health department has a list of the vendors and know if they comply or not. So there is an exception in there. The food trucks and trailers need to have 2 fire extinguishers, a 2A 10 VC, and 1 for cooking foods. It's called a K extinguisher. And then the hood system has to have a fire suppression system in it. All of those need to be serviced and up to date. All the fire extinguishers need to be serviced and up to date. And then they must be parked in approved areas, as we already talked about, to maintain emergency egress. Indoor fixed facilities, like something going on in this room. This is a change, and in the past, special event permits weren't needed for an event in here. Well, that doesn't mean that the facility doesn't need an inspection, and we haven't done inspection of these facilities. What are these facilities? It's the lodge, it's the country club, it's the senior center, places where more than 50 people can assemble. So what the process will be for these facilities is they will receive an annual inspection, an annual fire and safety inspection, to maintain that the fire sprinkler systems are operational, the fire alarm systems are operational, the exit and panic hardware are all working. And then they'll submit diagrams for the typical type of events that go on in these facilities. And they will be issued an annual permit, and people will be able to come in and use these facilities off of the annual event on a one-time charge. So we hope that this will make it easier, maintain the safety of the facilities and the event that's going on, and make sure that everybody understands what's going to happen. And it's already been identified. We've met with the POA. We've explained this process to them. Our fee schedule for the fire department is for fire inspections, first off, for an existing business. And it used to be a fixed fee that was, I don't remember what it was, but it was higher than the $59 for all facilities. So if we were inspecting a 500 square foot office and the lodge, it was the exact same fee. Well, as the POA talked about, we're doing cost recovery. That's not a fair analysis of the time involved in doing one inspection versus a large inspection. So we broke it out by square footage. So up to 1,000 feet, a fire inspection will be $59. From 1,001 to 2,500 square feet, $118. From 2,501 to 10,000 square feet, $178. And anything over 10,000 square feet is $237 for the inspection. If we need an engine company to stand by for an event, that costs $275 an hour. That's the actual cost for the positions of the 3 firefighters assigned to that engine, of the fire apparatus, and on their salaries and benefit. That's the fully encumbered cost. And the fire chief or the fire marshal for those inspections and the standby is $175 an hour. So we wanted to share this information to be totally transparent and try to answer your questions at the end of the presentation.
Good evening. So for the code enforcement's involvement, we get a copy of the approval letter from our city planner, same letter that goes to the applicant. We then get a list of where the event will be taking place and what was approved. A code enforcement officer will go out to the location of the event just to conduct an inspection, do a quick walkthrough. If everything is in compliance, we're good to go and we can move on. If we come across anything that's not in compliance, anything that wasn't listed on the initial application, for instance, you have a jumper, food, and that wasn't listed on the application initially, then that warrants an immediate $500 citation to the organizer. My only recommendation is that you list everything that you're going to be doing, because the goal is not to cite or shut your event down. It's just to ensure, like the fire chief said, the life safety of all the members attending this event.
That concludes our presentation.
All right, that's a lot for everyone to absorb. And we're going to be handing out the Scantrons for the quiz shortly, which would be awful. One of the things I wanted to touch on before we go to our time to for member comments was our communication team. And if you haven't noticed, they're outstanding. And if I'll use JWC as a great example. If you saw our Oktoberfest flyer, it was awful in the beginning. And then we showed them some pictures of things that we like, and they made a beautiful flyer for us. And in addition to that, they adapted it so it could be on the screens. The TVs when you're driving out, they put it in the newsletter. That is available. Their assistance is available to all sanctioned clubs. If you need their help for a full design, so a full remodel, and that's what we absolutely needed, they would prefer 90 days in advance. And just come to them, show them what you've done before and any ideas, and it is amazing what they can do. If you already know what you want on there, and let's say you have a great flyer or a great image and whatever it is, when you fill out the form online, you can talk about what you would like them to do. If you would like to put it on the screens, would you like it in the newsletter? If it's way well in advance, probably 90 days in advance, would you like to have it in the magazine that goes out? So if you're planning something, I'll use the car show as a great example, or Oktoberfest, where we know when it's going to be, go ahead and work with the communications team to have it in the magazine. They can also print your flyer. So instead of the club absorbing the cost of printing flyers and color, they can do that for you. So again, all of that is online where you can upload your information if you already have it set and ready to go, or if you need assistance. They're beyond creative and have access to many things, and I just can't speak highly enough about them. So we're gonna move to member comments. There are some people who did fill out a comment card, and I believe there's one person online. So we're gonna go ahead and start with them. And for anyone else, again, you do not need, if you don't want to complete a comment card. Just when you raise your hand, we'll call you up and just please say your name and track and lot, and we'll go from there. Harmony?
Yes, thank you. We'll call on our 3 written first, and then we had 1 online, and then we'll move to open comments. Our first is Linda Sproul. Next is Blake Benelli.
Blake Benelli, 3831-234. Board, I come to speak to you tonight. I have an idea for a policy that can maybe be created in regards to event space. I think that we need to create a policy that guarantees that the venue that's been rented will be maintained and presentable in the same condition or better condition than at the time of booking. Or maybe, like in my case, a policy that does not guarantee that the space rented will be maintained and presentable at the time of the event that you're having. As you guys all know, I have an event planned here at the lodge in April. I've been reaching out to the community and speaking to people about what's going on and how my event was planned well before notice of renovation. The renovation is severely interfering with my event, and the community outreach to me has been incredible. People are extremely upset. So with that being said, I want to leave you guys just with one question. If you were me, or if you had a daughter or a son, what would you want them to do if you were in my position? All right, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Blake.
Steve Liebring.
Well, Renee, you took most of what I was going to say when you said this is a lot to absorb. And that I think is probably shared by many people in the audience. So that's all we're really asking is that before you take any action, solid tonight or we're like at, is there an opportunity for the clubs to give some written feedback? Give us a chance to meet and go through all this and dissect it and then give you some good positive feedback one way or the other. And so if there's that opportunity, we'd sure appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll call on Chris Poland, if you can unmute your mic on Zoom.
There we go. Thanks a lot, Harmony. Chris Poland on behalf of the Men's Golf Club. I just wanted a clarification. Every time we have a tournament, we have some kind of a food event inside the country club, and there can be anywhere from 30 to 70 or 80 people in there. Do we need to go through the permit and fee process for those events that are held inside the country club?
The events that are inside the building, why don't we talk broadly about that? So the discussion I've had with the POA over the years is that these types of spaces are intended to have gatherings, to have some types of events. Now, might you have more than 50 people? I would hope so. So have your event, enjoy it, but the space is designed for that. So a special event permit you do not need. If your event, say, is at the senior center, there was an activity in one time in which they also had individuals selling things outside of the senior center. That type of event allows for the general public to show up and the potential to exceed more than 50 people. So if the outside component did not occur, then we would not require a special event permit for that portion within the building. Once it moves outside, then it becomes an unknown and a special event permit would be required. Now, having said what I just did about the space, I assume that the capacity of the space is not being exceeded because I assume that the fire chief may have a comment on that part. But in general, when you're inside a building, undertaking an activity, you're fine. No special event permit is necessary.
If I could tag on to that, it's the fire chief. As I mentioned, the inspection process that areas of assembly go through on an annual basis, that would cover this facility, such as the country club for that event. So they will get an annual fire inspection, and they will also get a permit to run an assembly occupancy. And so at that annual inspection, we'll be verifying those built-in life safety, fire safety features are in effect. You will work through the POA with your application to use that facility, and it's their responsibility to maintain the requirements of fire life safety, occupant load, exiting, and all that stuff. But we would not be involved unless it was outside of that scope.
And if I can just add one more
Great, thank you
comment.
very much. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Pullen, I'm sorry, if I can just add one more comment. So while a special event permit is not required, we do just ask that any vendors do have a city business license or single day vendor permit.
I wanted to just get a clarification on that. Of course, everything that we do inside the country club and the POA provide the food, so there are no vendors. But we do have a barbecue that we hold at Holiday Harbor, and we bring in an outside, I don't know if he's a vendor or he's a guy that delivers his food to our barbecue. Nothing is sold. I mean, we buy the whole thing. Is he considered a vendor, and does he need a permit?
That type of activity, it's outdoors. The number of people, I gather from the comment, is a public gathering. So the number of people is probably going to exceed the 50. So you would need a special event permit. That vendor is going to need some type of approval through the health department. And what typically happens is I work with and really rely upon the POA activities department for activities that occur behind the gate relative to working with the clubs to make sure that they obtain health department approval. We will put together conditions of approval specifying that, but the POA activities group is already discussing with you the fact that vendors are going to need to be either on the county's approved list or that they demonstrate some type of certificate that allows them to operate, including the business license.
And again, I'm sorry, just for
thank
one
you.
more clarification. If the vendor providing the food was the lodge itself that operates their own health department permit, as a part of that permit, they would be able to do that. If it's an outside vendor that came in and did the cooking, they would then need to get the health department permit.
Right, what we've used in the past is like a pit barbecue organization that delivers the food already cooked and serves it. But I understand that they're treated as a vendor now and would have to meet those requirements. I'm sure that's no surprise to them. Is it fair for us to assume that all of the easy ups that are provided by the POA pass the fire department requirements? Or is that something we need to worry about?
Chris, can you repeat that? We didn't quite understand what you're saying.
Well, I understood that there was a requirement related to fire safety, and tents and easy ups were considered tents. The easy ups that we use in the men's club are all provided by the POA. And the question is can we assume that those are approved, or is that something that we need to ask the fire department to verify for us?
Well, the tents are fireproof. Does the fire department, once they're set up, need to come out for an event and inspect that they're set up properly? And is there a fee associated with that? Follow-up question to Chris's.
If it's a small event, we probably will not come out there and charge an additional fee for that inspection. Working with the POA, knowing the equipment that they have, we're comfortable with that they have what's required. If it's not, if it's a club though, and I've been at some events already last year where at one event, I found 3 easy ups that were not rated. And they had to work with each other to get those replaced as quickly as possible. So again, what really tells us what's going on is what you submit in the plan. And as best as we can ask, as Ruby identified, be as forthcoming and forward with what you're doing so that we can make sure that we're doing you the justice you need.
Great, thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I just had, excuse me, just one more quick question, and that is, any beer and wine or alcohol that we purchase and serve at no charge, is that need to be covered by an ABC license? This is outside of the country club.
To clarify your question, Chris, this is Lynn. Is this alcohol that's purchased from the country club for this function?
No, purchased from Costco, carried in, like at the Holiday Harbor or for one of our tournaments and served out on the golf course.
Lynn, the ABC, the new law states that anybody that pours has to be licensed.
Right, right. So to answer your question, Chris, so recently, we do not have somebody here from ABC, and maybe this will clarify a lot of club questions. ABC, the POA has had to have all of our staff that serve alcohol go through responsible beverage service training. Some of the clubs that serve alcohol, I know JWC was one of them, they've had to have one of their club members go through this training. They've updated the laws and requirements on serving alcohol. Technically, yes. When you're serving alcohol, you need to have an ABC permit.
So is that something that we apply for independently? Is that something that?
Yes, so the club
Can be covered
itself-
under,
Yeah, and to apply for an ABC permit, you would have to be a 5013C organization. So we are providing links to all this information. I don't want to speak on behalf of ABC because I'm not ABC, but this is why we wanted to provide links to this information for the clubs and groups that are wanting to serve alcohol, why we wanted the city to come so they could kind of explain their fee structure and their requirements, and then also links to this information for the clubs and groups to obtain that.
And I'll say this, I was at an event and it was a club event, it was a barbecue, and after learning all of that, it was much simpler for them to tell everyone, bring your own. Right? It also, from a liability standpoint, it probably reduces the liability. I'm not going to state for a fact that it does, but certainly helps if you're not the one providing the alcohol, if someone gets intoxicated and gets into an accident. So that might be a way that clubs want to go if they're having a barbecue or a get together, that everyone just brings their own. All right, Harmony, the next.
The board's going to allow open comments at this time. Correct.
Does anyone have any questions? Come on up. All we need is your name, check and lot.
And it turned red. Oh, red is to me off, not on. Okay. Sue Collins, 3804-031. Appreciate that you had all the clubs together, but for some future things to make this kind of thing better, I could not see the slides. I'm sitting way back here in the first row. I pity the people that were back in the 6th row. So why this big gap here in between? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. The POA slides, I couldn't see hardly at all. The city, thank you very much. We could see those. So I'm just saying for future, please, if you're trying to involve us, my understanding this was a workshop. To me, this was a presentation, not a workshop. So watch the wording that goes out there because you're presenting all of these things already. It's a done deal. It's not something that we can change unless I'm wrong. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, this is a workshop from the board to present the information from the POA and the city to the members and club members.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that was not
These are-
disseminated to the clubs properly because,
These- Oh, sorry to interrupt you. These are
Okay.
current policies and a little bit back. This is current policies, fees, procedures in place as of today. We haven't had one of these meetings in several years, which is why the board wanted to invite everybody to attend, kind of as I like to call it POA 101, learning about how all these things operate. Some of the new fees that have come out from the city. We have not changed our fee schedule yet. We're in the process of doing the budget for next year. Yes, ma'am.
a question that I had as far as for clubs, the menu, it said on here that, one of the slides said something about, that there is discounts on the menu, on certain menu items. And I was wondering, is there a list that we can pick from? Because when we've worked with the lodge on getting food, there wasn't an actual list. It was, we were looking for how can we cut down the amount that we and our members pay? Why not have a discounted menu then and say, these are the items that you can get for this much money and have an actual list? That way we can pick from list A, B, or C, and we have a much better idea of what we're comparing. And then another question specifically, as an example, the holiday home tour. Yes, on the home tour, for example, the holiday home tour that the Women's Club does, we have 15 vendors in this room. They're inside the room. Once in a while, we do put some outside, but if there's rain, etc., they're in this room. My understanding in future is all 15 of those vendors will need a business license, correct? And then whatever they're paying us, because we're giving them the booth, etc. Now, on something like that, we need to have an additional license for the event.
I think what your question is, if you stay inside, do you need to apply for a special event permit from the city? If you stay inside, you do not need to apply for a special event for the city. When you start moving the event outside and you're using both facilities, that very well could require a special event permit.
So if we put two vendors, one by the fountain, let's say, and another one on the grass coming in, you know, you're talking 2 or 3 vendors that might be out there, because we're doing this in December, so most people don't want to be out there, but we would have to get a special permit. I'm just saying in the future, then I won't even allow that to happen. So that's the work around it, is not even to allow it, and just, this is what it is. Now, we can be out on the patio. I'm assuming that's part of this. Okay.
Thank you, Sue.
If I could though, just on the patio, remember also, as you can see, there's exit signs there. And so anything set up outside on the patio would need to maintain an exit way.
Any other questions, member comments? Artie, I'm so sorry. You're next, Paul.
Denise Babette Stubbs, 3716158. Just a couple of clarifications that I may have misunderstood some of the slides. In regards to Sanction Club for a no fee for use of the lodge or the meeting rooms, I noted up there it said Monday through Friday, I think before 5 p.m. That seems a little odd. We have our meetings after 5 p.m. because people work. So does that mean that we need to start paying a fee for our meeting rooms because we hold our meetings after 5 p.m.?
So how the fee schedule is currently is Monday through Friday until 5. Without food and beverage service, the rooms are free. On the weekends, if you're not having food and beverage service, but you're utilizing the banquet room, there is a fee for use of the room.
Right, clarification again though. So our meeting starts we begin meeting at 4:30. That goes until about 7:30 or 8. Where does that fall on your fee schedule?
So if you want to use this room on
Yes.
Friday,
Thursday,
Thursday, there's not a fee.
there's no fee.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure, but
So, right, and when we approved that, if you could turn your mic off, the feedback. When the board approved the policy several years back, they were trying to, we have these preset rooms, there's free rooms, POA office, conference room. There's different rooms that we've set as free. And then during the week, because the banquet facility, we also are trying to have banquets and events in these restaurants. They set these time parameters to give some time for clubs and then also to allow the restaurants to schedule banquets and events. So we could make some revenue. Yes.
second question, clarification of the definition of vendor with regards to the certificate of insurance requirements. If a sanctioned club, such as a women's golf club or women's club, has a booth at an event, are they a vendor that will be required to provide certificate of insurance?
Are you asking the question to me in regards for the POA's requirement or for, so, okay, so right now, the way that our requirement is on the vendors are for the food vendors, the jumpers, the amusement type of functions. When I touched on the special event insurance requirement earlier in my presentation, the event as a whole, so the car show, Fiesta Day, the tree lighting ceremony, these big special community events, the POA is having to purchase a special event insurance policy for the event as a whole. But if you, Club X, have an event and you have food vendors there, those food vendors have to have insurance, or you have amusement rides, they have to have insurance independently because there are a third party coming in providing that service. But you having a booth, have like an informational booth, we're not requiring you to have an insurance certificate for that.
So I'll just give you one example that I know is coming up. So it's Fiesta Days and Women's Club is selling pieces of pizza at their booth. They're a sanctioned club. Do you require a certificate of insurance from that
So
club?
currently the POA is buying the special event insurance for the entire event as a
Okay.
whole. Yes, ma'am.
So they don't need it.
Right. And the reason we wanted to bring this up to clubs is say some of these clubs are wanting to start hosting these larger special community events with the changes in ABC requirements, city requirements, fire requirements, and we're learning insurance requirements. All these additional coverages are needed. And so this is why we wanted to have this conversation, is all these different changes that the POA has encumbered. We want to share that because we're getting more requests for events from clubs. They want to host their own, or there's a lot of co-hosting, you'll hear that. But some groups do host their own individual event. And they would be required to buy the special event insurance if they're hosting a community event.
Thank you. One last comment really on the banquet pricing, country club versus the lodge. I've worked with both on events. The country club is great. You know, they clearly show you that there's a discounted amount. However, my experience with the lodge is very different. There's no specific pricing. It's take what you want off the menu and then they actually charge you a little more. So I would just like it to be consistent between the two venues.
Before you step away, one that I just want to make a comment. They're working on that, which is good, but you mentioned selling pizza at Fiesta Day, and I didn't know if the city wanted to make any comments on that, if there's any special requirements that the club would need to have if they're selling pizza at an event.
Can I clarify?
You could have, you would be required to have a health department permit to do that. It's actually a health department requirement to sell pizza from another vendor. It's food.
Right, and if I could clarify, so for Fiesta Day, this is where the city was talking about the collaboration with activities. and the Fiesta Day Committee. They collaborate those food vendors. The POA applies for a food permit for all those vendors participating in that individual event. But say a club wants to host their own event and have food vendors, then that club would go apply for that health permit for their club and all those vendors associated with it. So we are applying for it currently, like for Fiesta Day, for example.
That's great. So the POA covers the cost. So if clubs want to participate in that,
In
they
that
don't have to
particular
worry
event.
about a separate
Yes,
health, having to
correct.
pay that fee. Perfect. Paul?
Thank you. Paul Hawker, 3804-052. There's a lot of horsepower here tonight. This is quite a turnout. This is unusual for our city. It's nice to see the POA and the city and the management and support, and everybody getting together and obviously coordinated. It's nice. On the other hand, this is going to be something new for the 30 or 40 clubs that are currently toddling along in a happy way with lots of experience doing things a different way. And there's going to be a time for them to get with the program and to understand what needs to be done or should be done. Just as an example, what happens if a club estimates, less than 50 people are going to show, maybe 30, and then a lot of people show, maybe 51. Yeah, the fire trucks come in to the, you got to go grab another fire extinguisher out of your car. But on a serious note, these type of things can happen, and it's going to take a while for the community to adjust. And maybe there's a new sheriff in town, but we're going to try to get behind it and make it work. But if there's some kind of a way that you can give some advance help the clubs that may find themselves maybe in over their head, that would be because there's a lot of people that are not super administrators, but they're very generous with their time for the community and giving back everything to the community. They don't charge for this, and they're going to be hit with some big bills and maybe not ready to accept it. So that would be helpful. And the other thing is maybe there's the clubs can find out who the go-to person is. If all these clubs need to get insurance, for them to go out and shop all the different companies and find, I don't know if you can make an approved vendor list. I know that's hard to do. But if something like this could be done, so they could say, well, here's a vendor, this is about how much it might cost you, here's his phone number. And they can, as opposed to just trying to keep, looking at 20 vendors or something to try to get insurance for a cupcake, raffle or something. So that's about it. So, so just if the community, if something doesn't have to be nailed down, I know it takes a while to get things done in the city. And this might be a good time for it to take a little time to get this done so people can give some feedback and adjust a little bit. Thank you.
Could I address this? Sir, I think one thing, again, we're here to ensure the health and safety of the event. We don't want to shut down any events, but if there's a health and safety factor, we will have to go in there and evaluate it. We might be able to deal with, let's say, a food vendor that might not be set up legally and just isolate a small closure of a food vendor and the event can continue. But for the city to go in there and to completely shut down something is definitely not our intention. Code enforcement will go out there, and if needed, they might issue a citation, but our intent is to work with you. Again, through proper planning, we can better prepare for these events and try to eliminate any of these things from occurring during the event.
If I could too, just to clarify, you happen to use the 30 example, then up to 51, which may necessitate the sheriff's department coming in and handcuffing that extra person. Just kidding. So if you have under 50 people, then you wouldn't come to us, the city, at all. Now, there may be a requirement that you work with the POA on that, but you would not work with us. And at times, numbers may vary slightly. So I have comments or questions all the time from clubs. Well, we're not so sure. This is what we kind of think is happening. And we discuss it for a while and we get kind of a sense of whether or not they think it's going to be quote unquote a lot or a little, and then try to assist them in that respect. But if you come in and you think it's 30 and a few more people show up, a few more people showed up. But again, the threshold is 50 and above.
Just briefly, I just wanted to say we appreciate your comments. The city, from the city, we realize that we've given a lot of information tonight and there's, quite a few changes that are coming forward. And we want to do everything possible to be informative and helpful. And so we're going to make sure that we get this presentation up on our website. Our fee schedule is getting ready to go up on the website. And so any questions that any club members have for the city, we're happy to address them. Please feel free just to contact City Hall and we're happy to help in any way possible.
Thank you. That's helpful, but I got several phone calls from people in other clubs asking what's going on tonight. They didn't know. I couldn't tell them. I looked on the website. People said go to the POA website to look for an agenda, what's going on. And unless it just happened at the last minute, nobody could see anything. This presentation that was up here was not available to the community. So this is a blind faith number coming to you, try to figure out what's going on. People lay out the schedule. It's a little frightening to a number of people. My personal experience, I'm the president of the pickleball club here. I know most people don't know what pickleball is, but Canyon Lake sure does. We went from a year ago about 150 members. This year, we just signed up over 500 members. All this is volunteer stuff. All the things that we pay for, many of the operators pay for these fees out of our pockets instead of taking it out of the club's money, because this club's money is given back to the community. And if the fees go up, you're going to have to not expect the clubs to give back to the community if we're paying for the fire, all the essential things. But there's only so much in that pot. I'm in an issue right now. We have 4 pickleball courts for this whole community to play on. We have 5,000 houses. It's something we don't know what's going to happen from time to time, at tournament to whatever event. So we're going to try to be, to make everything work out possibly. But sometimes we get surprised with things, and we're going to be in good faith. I'm going to assume that everybody up there is going to be in good faith too, and we're going to move forwards and bring this community up in standards. I understand where they're coming from. I go to Menifee and see the events that they throw down there. These aren't put together by clubs. These are where the communities like our Fiesta Days come out, and the people like you that put these tremendous events together. And I agree, they're big, they're huge, they need to be well taken care of, and they need to have good safety and consideration. But sometimes somebody that's gonna, I talked to the ski people that were gonna have like pancakes with Santa, and they canceled it because Santa didn't show. They had cupcakes because they didn't have to cook the cupcakes. So it's going to take a while to adapt to it. If people get emotional, you may hear a little bit of that, but everybody's going to try to move forward as professionally as we can.
And if I could also, we were talking up here, the event, we still need to know, just like the POA has their 30-day threshold, we have approximately the same. Technically, it's 28 days, but you can think of it as a month. So please have the application in no later than that period. And what it allows us to do, again, is to ensure that if you, for some reason, are not on that first tier in which we can grant an easy approval, it allows us time to work through the different activities. And if there's going to be cooking, then we need to let the health department know. And you would also be working with your activities group on that. But we need to get on the same page. So what is happening during that time period is we're routing it for review. For the city's part, I typically ask that I get comments back in a couple weeks. So that gives the fire department, the building department, the health department, anyone else that I distribute to, time to prepare some comments to me so that I can combine those and put them in a letter and get them out to the people who have applied. And to be honest, it's been a little late sometimes for me. It's kind of the last second. The event may occur within a few days, which is unfortunate because, as I mentioned, we'd like to have the information passed along to the vendor. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit better job and get them out earlier for your benefit to get them to the vendor. But that's what is occurring, and that's why time is important. And you're assisting us and you're assisting yourself in that process so that we can clarify things if there's concern. And if something comes up at the last second, how are we going to work with that? So we need some time. We all need some time.
Lynn, do you mind commenting on the notification that was provided to the members? Because because you mentioned some people didn't know, and that was concerning to me. No, about the notification, you were saying some members didn't know about tonight's meeting?
As far as the invite, well, so we posted the board agenda. This was posted as a board agenda on our website. We have also posted the presentation. She was going to, I just text communications to find out, she was going to post it live also while we were doing the presentation and having the meeting, but we post the board agendas per our policy. Right, and we did send out an invite. The presentation, though, it was being posted today. So that part itself, but the agenda itself, in the agenda packet that we posted online, we did include the policies in the presentation. We kind of wanted to do this overview, but then as staff, we thought it would be extra helpful to have this webpage for y'all to go to. And so that'll be live. It'll all be, I'm sure they'll do a summary recap and post that on social media and on the website tonight or tomorrow. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies.
Okay, yeah, just to make it more clear. We have a club, we have a board of directors, we have members. They wanted to know what's going on. I wasn't able to go to the city and see what you presented up here. It was just, it kind of appeared tonight. But if it would have been posted, like you say, 30 days in advance to give people time, just as you need time to process it, this community is going to need some time to process this. This is this is a big deal. Bigger. I mean, it may be that you've worked on it for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's appreciated. But the club members and the club teams are going to need to adapt to this and make accommodations to fit within your regulations. So that's where so I'm asking for some communications from you. In other words, it would have been better if you would have posted on the city or the POA's website 30 days in advance of what you're going to cover today, so that people could come here with some intelligent questions and perhaps have a chance to process it. So I know you need some time, but the community is going to need some time too.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for sticking around when I asked you some more questions. I appreciate that. All right, thank you. Any other comments from the members? I'm gonna look up. I saw Joe, sorry. I made sure I looked left, so I saw the paper. We will get to everyone.
Joe, you have as long as you want. You don't need 3 minutes. You can go longer if you want.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Joe Commission, 3716-124. Real briefly, I wanted to ask Lynn, the club policies and facility use policies that you reviewed on the screen, those were already in place. This is just a review for the community to acknowledge or identify what is actually in place.
Correct. These are current policies that have been in place for years.
Okay,
Yes,
so no changes.
and I apologize, my cable's not working, so I can't show the projector. Yes, sir. No changes.
That's
The only
fine.
thing that would be changing is if when the board approves the budget coming up, that'll be presented in March.
Mhm.
Any fee schedule changes, or if they propose a policy change, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's just routine stuff. Yeah, thank you. To the city, I I'm a little disappointed that council's not here or representation from council's not here because they're the ones that approve these fees and these changes. And they're the ones that are making it effective March 1st. And it would have been nice to have them here hearing the concerns and whatnot. I knew the POA recognized the clubs and gave them free rooms for the most part, but it was refreshing to see the graphic that was up there and all the different charges that are out there and the clubs being charged zero on each one of those items. Made me realize that it's more than just you get the Magnolia Room for free for meetings. It's across the board for all the sanctioned clubs. And it's a wonderful service that the POA does for the community in honoring and respecting the commitment that the clubs have towards the community and the contributions that the club has. I challenge the city to look at that and recognize what the clubs do. And I'm not looking for them to change their tier 1, or excuse me, their tier 2 or tier 3 schedules. I understand that there's significant amount of work involved and there's costs involved, and certainly you need to recover those. But I'd like to see the city take a hard look. I know it's already done and approved, but maybe they can reopen that and look at that and see if they can recognize the service that the clubs, sanctioned clubs, do for the community and soften the blow. And I know a large part of the problem that we've had in the past is that events aren't applied for. The permits aren't applied for. They're just, the events go on and nobody knows that it happened. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think the city should know when there's an event going on. But if there's a fee involved to it, a lot of clubs, out of ignorance or just planning, are not going to want to spend that $100. They serve food at a picnic, have a caterer come in and just serve the food, and all of a sudden it's $100 and some fee that comes out of their revenue. So I challenge staff, city staff, to go back to council and ask them to possibly reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I saw a hand over there in the front. Yep.
Kathy Mulcahy, 3868-189. And I just had some clarifications more for the city on, I think you've answered one of my questions. If you're under 50, you do not need a permit. One of my questions is with food, and we do play days with the kids where they race around barrels and pools, usually 3 or 4 times a year. And often we bring potluck, like pizzas, Costco pizzas and cupcakes and cookies and things like that. This last time we did not sell them. Parents donated them. That's okay, correct? If you're under 50, we're usually at about 20 to 30.
Yeah, anytime you're under 50, a
don't have
permit is, no, it's not involved.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. We're a poor club and a $500 would break us.
Now again, you still, of course, have the POA
Yes.
requirements.
And we do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Come on up. Is there anyone in the room? And your name, please?
Marha Kidd, 3778-201. It's been a while. I didn't really want to talk about this, and don't be upset with me, Eric. But it is about facilities, and I didn't know what the agenda was really tonight. But as a longtime homeowner since 1989, and being who I am, I've always cared about our community and who uses our facilities. That's always been important to me. The balance, when I was tennis president or at pickleball, pump track, wherever it is, these are our amenities and who's using them. And we've had that conversation because we have so many players. Who's using our facilities? Priority. Yes, we're entitled to guests, but I don't think we're entitled to call in everybody when you're not with your guests. So there is a balance. So Eric, the first person that spoke today kind of concerned me. So I know that we're in the process of redoing this building. So did he have something on the books that he had to cancel? And is that what happened to everybody on the books this year for weddings or whatever they had planned? Because now we're going to redo this building. That was a tough thing for me because I had to beg, borrow, steal to get the money for the pump track because it went over that $800,000 threshold. We had to get the community involved. So that was tough. I support you guys because we voted you in. So I have to trust that you're going to make good decisions on our behalf. Money came out of repair replacement. But when that building is done, does every Tom, Dick, and Harry get to use our building? Does that open it up to everybody out there? Who gets to rent our building? What's the priority of the homeowners or outsiders? Because I know it's dark in here. There's no street lights. They're not familiar with Canyon Lake. So you kind of open yourself up to liabilities anytime anybody's in here that's not familiar with Canyon Lake. You know, we saw that. I remember when Cool Boy, holy schmoly, he had a dance hall in there just for a little bit. And it was fun, but that was taken away because we had a bunch of strangers in there that they weren't really familiar with Canyon Lake and they're driving our streets at 2 a.m. with no lights. So I just want to put it out there. What are you thinking? Are we going to make this building beautiful because we're renting it out to everybody else? Or is it just for the homeowners and their guests? Thanks.
Thank you, Marha. And I saw, yep, we have another question or member comment.
Colleen Morrison, 3863441. Okay, in my case with the theater group, I just have a couple of questions because we tend to use facilities a lot longer for other things because of rehearsals. So if we were to use Indian Beach, it requires sometimes more than 50 people in our show. So does that include a special event permit? Also, we have rehearsals before a show, as anybody does with a show, sometimes 4 weeks before, and we'll use the facility like Indian Beach stage, maybe at least 3 times a week. So does that mean the club has to pay the $75 for every single day that we use it? And do the same times apply, like what's free and what's not? There is no times here, like the Sunday, you know, Friday through whatever. Because that's really costly for us, as you can imagine. I think our club's a different situation because you have to have rehearsals and maybe now a special event permit if we have more than 50 members in a cast. So those are just some things, you know, that we have to think about, I guess.
Okay, I'm
Because
gonna
our
have you hold
revenue-
on for a moment so they can answer that question. So if they're having dress rehearsals and at Indian Beach, there'd be more than 50 people, so that's outside, would they need a permit for each time?
Well, regardless of whether it's a rehearsal or the real activity, if you could turn off your mic. Yeah, thanks. You would need a special event permit for that because the language in the ordinance is extremely broad. It's any type of gathering, parade, activity, event It's a whole paragraph of language intended to signify some type of gathering. So it just isn't the people performing for others that will come. It's the total for everyone that's there. With respect to having the activity multiple times, I think that's probably a case of you coordinating with the POA relative to the dates, listing for us also when the dates are. But relative to, say, inspections or what other type of trigger you might have, I think it would depend on what you're doing when you're having those performances or practicing for those performances. For example, if each time you have the same setup and say it involves some type of hazardous, what I'm going to refer to as hazardous material, possibly just one inspection by the fire department would be adequate for all the times if that's when you're continually doing it. I'll let the chief correct me if I'm wrong in that statement. But I think the intent is to understand what you're doing. If it's repetitive and each time it is the same, then I don't think we need to constantly come out. But you would definitely need the special event permit to at least trigger some type of review by us.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I'm sorry.
If I could just add on to him, an example that we do with the POA would be Taco Tuesday. And the city looks at Taco Tuesday as one event for the 6 or 8 times that they have it. So they apply for one permit for all the Taco Tuesday events. We do one inspection and they're good. Unless we have a complaint or a problem and there's follow-up, we view that as one event.
Okay, thanks. That clears it up. Makes it a little more cost effective for us. I think that was, yeah, I think, did the time, so the rental fee though, is that still $75 a day? If it's after 5 PM?
So so it's based on the fee schedule. So during the week, I don't know here with me, for the park, you're saying Indian Beach for the stage? I would have to go to the fee schedule, sorry. It would be based on that. So we're the clubs, we've been giving the park rental for free. I was trying to find out my fee schedule. Right now, the fee schedule that's listed in the book is the member rate. The clubs, we have not been charging for reservation of those areas. We have been charging though electrical fees, like is it water and electrical? I don't want to overspeak. Okay, yes, water and electrical fees, because it's a hard cost to the POA, similar to staff hours. So certain things that are hard costs, those we have passed along to the clubs because the POA is paying for that. And yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-up question? We have a follow-up question.
City, I have a follow-up question. It's on the same schedule. What is Little League and co-ed softball are starting up at the fields in the next couple weeks, and every single day for the next 3+ months, they're going to have 50 people over. Do they need to apply for a permit for the whole 3 months as one permit? Or how would you like to handle that? Because 50 people, when you have 300 kids in Little League, you know, and then count their parents, it's well over that amount.
I would view the baseball field like the lodge, where we would do one annual inspection of the complex, have one permit from the POA for the activities that go on there. Opening day, closing day, some of those other special events that go along the way where there's other festivities going on would probably need a separate special event permit. But no, we don't have an expectation that every baseball game or softball game, when there's 52 people there, that's what the facility is designed for and intended for. And it's just being used in its normal use, just like the lodge or the country club.
Thank you.
Well, hold on one moment, because there's someone else that hasn't spoken. If you'd like to come up. And then you'll be next, Sue.
Jessica Rubio, 3716145. It's in regard to what you just spoke about. Will we have to be applying for that one time of the fields being looked at with the 50+ players? And then I also wanted to ask about the sanction application. Is there a deadline for that? And how do we know what clubs have done that for every 3 years?
So if I could answer the first question, it's the property owner's responsibility to maintain a facility in an operational, safe manner. So it would be the POA that would be responsible for that inspection and that annual permit. Any additional activity would probably then go to the club or organization that's using it.
Right. And then in regards to the club, I would say if you're not sure, contact the activities department. And there is links to all the club stuff on our website. Also, if you're not sure about the application and what's required for that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so we're getting ready to present the package of everybody that's submitted in February. So it'll be effective 2022, 23, 24 for that 3-year cycle. So if people submit after this next month, it would still be the same cycle. It's just we're trying to do them as a group, so they're not individually 3-year sanctioning periods. Yeah.
Any other members from the comments or member comments? There we go, Sue.
Sue Collins, 3804-031. If you're going to do that for the ball field, then you're going to do it for the tennis court, you're going to do it for the pickleball court, you're going to do it for, I mean, the tennis people get together and they have an event, they have a social, let's say, the pickleball people have a social once a month, that there could possibly be more than 50 people there. It's a monthly event. So you're telling me then this case, once the pickleball court system is set up and inspected, they don't need to worry about the social event once a month, or the tennis club, or the theater group for that matter at Indian Beach. Why is that different with the stage area there than the pickleball courts? It's a place where they need to meet to perform whatever their activity is. And it's the same way for Indian Beach for the theater group. I've been there many a times and an event, a plan. We want these events to take place here in our community, and they have to practice. I've been in those plays. It's usually a 2-weekend event where they actually put the show on, but it's weeks and sometimes months of practicing before. Some practices are 6 or 8 people. Another night it may be 30 people, and some nights even 50 when you're doing dress rehearsals and things like that. So I don't see a consistency here. Little League, it's okay, but the theater group, it's not. So I'm confused.
You want to go? We're trying to be consistent. I think the normal activities that would occur at a sports facility like the tennis club, like the pickleball courts, the basketball courts, there's, to my knowledge, not a need for any special permit there. If they're doing some kind of a weekly social or a monthly social, I haven't seen those come across my desk. They might require a special event permit. I can't really answer it because I don't know what the event is that you're discussing. For the theater group or the singers, if they're preparing for an event and they're going to be out there 3 or 4 times, and it's the same group that's consistent, they have control over what they're doing and what they're setting up. Another group could set it up and do it differently. So each individual group would be responsible for getting their own special event permit, even though they're using the same facility. Everybody's using the same facility. It's the different groups and how they come in and operate at those facilities that require the special event permit.
The only thing I was going to say is relative to your use of the word social. So again, to piggyback on what the fire chief indicated, when you say social, if they're going out there to play, if you will, a round robin little tournament, that is what they're there for, then that's the function of that court. That's how we would view it. Now, if you take it more broadly, it's social in that you're going to set up tables and chairs because you're going to eat and, you know, interact with each other's, then no, that is not the function of the court. But if you're undertaking the purpose of the facility, if you're doing that, then short of a tournament in which you're going to be inviting other people to watch the activity, you're going to have crowds, you're going to have sign-in, you're going to have setups. Because of this extra group, no, we wouldn't require anything.
But in that case, it's club members. It's not beyond that. It's the club members that are having, they're playing round robin, as you said, and things like that. And by the way, there's tables out there already that are set up for putting our stuff in, sitting down, having a drink, having stuff like, it's confusing to us. And I'm asking if everybody else is confused as well. I mean, raise your hand if you're confused. Thank you. So I'm not trying to gang up here, but this has been the problem, is we need consistency. You want us to work at this smoothly, but it needs to be consistent. It can't be okay for this club, this place, this thing, everything has to be. And yes, and as Marha said, these are our amenities. We're all members. Most clubs are full of members that are POA. You know, we live here. Yes, there are people that aren't, but majority of most clubs are people that live in the community. And these are our amenities. We pay for them, and we just want to be able to use them without additional, extraordinary fees. You know, the yearly inspection, I totally get that. It's wonderful. But that if Little League, okay, each time they play, another team comes in from somewhere else, I can say, well, how do these kids know the rules? So I'm just saying we can look at things separately, and there's confusion, but I think we can make it smooth. But we want consistency between the clubs here in Canyon Lake, and we're not seeing that today.
Thank you, Sue. Did Paul raise his hand again? Well, I'll just ask, are there any other member comments as we're getting closer to 8 o'clock? Steve, any member comments? No? No other member comments? I just want to make sure everyone's voices are heard. All right, going. All right, you know, thank you, Sue, for your comment at the end. And that is really one of the purposes of having all of us here today. And this is just the beginning. And we can certainly have more workshops. I think workshops are great. I like the more informal style of being able to, you know, have people come up and discuss, and, you know, one comment might lead to another comment. So appreciate you coming up again. The information, our presentation will be posted on our website if it's not already on there. I encourage you, I did get a sneak peek of the events page that they created that will walk you through step by step if you're planning an event. So that's going to be really helpful for the people who are organized and those who aren't, because it's very simple just to follow. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank you one more time. Thank you so much to the city coming out here, and I greatly appreciate it. This would have been awful trying to present all that you guys do. So thank you so much for being here and being so concerned for the health and safety and for our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and, well, I just want to ask board members, any last comments or any comments from our board members?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting,
Aye.
say aye. Aye. Thanks, guys.